What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the fourth album by rock band Trapt. Basically, this project is called Only Through the Pain, and it came out in the summer of 2008. Now, this is a particular hit album, but this is also kind of starting to get removed from Trapt's charting days on like the rock charts as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. This also, I reviewed their 2005 album, Someone in Control, back in October, and I noticed that also about that particular album was a lot of folks tried to drop like Trapt on their head as far as that particular pitch kind of happened. They did have some degree. Their 2005 album did have some degree of charting hits on there, but it didn't do as well as like their 2002 album, the self-titled album with Headstrong, but it didn't do as well as their self-titled 2002 album with Headstrong and Still Frame on there, I'd have to suppose. And it's just kind of the concept. A lot of times it feels like folks tried to drop it feels like a lot of times folks tried to drop Trapt on their heads in terms of the particular pitch of the reception that they particularly got on some of their albums. Like Someone in Control didn't do that terrific, and neither did this album particularly. It did have two charting singles off this particular album, but they were kind of a far cry from their charting hits of like 2002, and it was kind of a far cry from their 2002 and 2005 days, I'd have to suppose. And really, I want to say that Trapt from 2002 went platinum, something like that, maybe double platinum, something of that particular pitch. But as of, I'm really not sure if Only Through the Pain from 2008 even went gold even 16 years later, I'd have to suppose. So it's a decent concept about that particular pitch, but it's still a pretty good album, I'd have to suppose. Do appreciate this album. I remember giving Someone in Control from 2005 like a 10 out of 10 when I reviewed that back in October. So I definitely connected with that one. That was definitely some more widespread appeal that particular album kind of had. And it was definitely, it proved like folks wrong in terms of the pitch of saying that Trapt was just kind of a one hit wonder with just Headstrong and a little bit of Still Frame as far as those pitches kind of happen. But this album, not as good as this album is not as full blown as good as Someone in Control. It's not going to get a 10 out of 10, but it still is a pretty quality album. And I would have to say it does have some hits on here. It's just kind of whether or not folks are going to give a damn as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. It's quality enough to kind of recommend. It's just kind of the concept these singles are far removed. They just don't have like the casual appeal. Like the lead single, Who's Going Home With You Tonight, is a decent song, but it just doesn't have the pitch or the overall energy and just overall quality casual appeal that some of their earlier days kind of had. It's just kind of the concept. I think folks want another song like Headstrong that's just a little bit more snappy. Not to say that they don't have those particular songs, because there are some kind of snappy type songs on here, but it's just not in the approach of just like the casual, this kind of quotable this quotable and recitableness of Headstrong or Still Frame of some of those particular type pitch of ones. But they do have some decent rock charting ones that just is kind of like minor type hits that just kind of gets them to chug along more so than have these be like must have kind of album smashes, I'd have to say. But still a pretty good concept. So we'll go ahead and talk about some of these. I do feel like the approach of this album is pretty standard, I'd have to say. It doesn't quite have the mastery of like the malaise that Someone in Control particularly kind of had. That one had a lot of kind of evening after hours malaise about it, and just some good pep and energy that just had a lot of bite and character. They just had a lot of spunk on that particular album that just lasted pretty well, and just had a particular spark that was just very engaging. This album's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more ruminating, I have to suppose. Not quite as contentious, not quite as just like bustle and in your face, just with songs like Headstrong and Stand Up and some of those type, not quite as much in your face like Headstrong and Stand Up and some of their earlier type hits as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. But I would have to say they do a pretty good concept of having some of this standard malaise. I mean, it is some day makeshift on here. I do feel like there's some decent commerce about some of these particular type tunes. Just kind of it just feels a lot more of like summer ruminating and just kind of anguish. It's just kind of the concept when you think of Tupac, when you think of Tupac with songs like Life Goes On and Picture Me Rolling, some of those type tunes are just some standard ruminating that's just pretty thought provoking. It's kind of like that Tupac sort of sense within a rock sense, just the concept of just having some of these on here. I feel like there's some songs like Black Rose. I feel like there's some other songs on here like Only One in Color, Wherever She Goes, Curiosity Kills, some of these type ones that just kind of have some thought provoking typeness on here. I mean, they do have some kind of in your face type songs, but just not as many. It's just kind of the concept. A lot of this is just more summer malaise, just kind of in a more just kind of introspective type sense and just more kickback, I suppose. It's definitely a makeshift kind of album. It's just more relaxed in the sense of doing it. This is not as full blown makeshift. Like I do feel like Trapt was just kind of more chore, and I feel like Trapt from 2002 was just more chore like music and more angsty type stuff, just more in a new metal type sense. And I feel like Someone in Control is just more of like a makeshift kind of after hours, day after evening after hours type pitch as far as that particularly kind of happens. But I feel like this album just has some summer pep, but it's just very thought provoking and just kind of has like that mild kind of sense of just having like some summer kickback just within this. This album has some summer kickback just within like a mild sense of just kind of getting some stuff done, but just kind of more just kind of ruminating. So this is a ruminating project. So this is a ruminating project, but it does it without most of the edginess that the previous albums kind of had, I'd have to suppose. It's just a little bit more relaxed and more refined this time, I'd definitely have to suppose. But there were 4 singles off this particular project, so we're going to get to some of these. You'll see what I'm talking about. This just kind of being like some summer pep, just within a relative sense. This has that sort of bounce about it. It's definitely a bustling album, kind of decent Traverse stuff like that, but just kind of in a more introspective type sense, I'd have to suppose. So Who's Going Home With You Tonight is the first single. This is a pretty nice one. This is like a summery kind of late day wind down tune, I'd have to say. This is some vintage Trapt malaise. I would definitely feel like this is a pretty good particular song to kind of get from them just within that aspect, I'd have to say. And this is some good makeshift Lear, I'd have to suppose. So this one's a little bit more kickback, just a little bit more relaxed just within the tone. The riffs on this particular song are just a lot lazier, just a lot more. So the riffs on Who's Going Home With You Tonight are just a lot lazier, just a lot more R&R type kickback as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. Just some good concepts kind of get on here, I'd have to say. Do appreciate this particular song, but it's not the normal energy that Trapt kind of has. I do feel like they probably should have kicked off the album with a little bit more of like ferocity on this particular album, because I just feel like the relative kickback of this particular song just has a lot more in a wind down kind of sense. That it just seems strange to kick off the album, roll out with the song that's just kind of in more wind down type mode, just kind of more going home and just settling, just kind of going home and settling in for the night, just within that particular kind of pitch. And it's not really, I mean, it's kind of a makeshift type tune, but it just has some summer edge about it, just within that relative bounce of just maybe just leaving a bar or a dance club, something like that. Just a relative kind of sense, just driving home, some pitches like that. But it's a relative kickback for the ladies as far as that particular pitch kind of has with it. But it's just kind of the concept that it's just, it is in wind down mode. It's just kind of probably not one that I would have chosen to kick off the album. Maybe this could have been like the second or third single, I'd have to suppose. Was just kind of the concept that maybe it was just the wrong kind of choice. I feel like they needed something with a little bit more kick, but still pretty good song. It's just relatively lazy and just more lambent type one. Contagious is the second single, and this is another kind of malaise, ruminating type song similar to Headstrong and Stand Up, I'd have to say. It's pretty good concept. I like the concept of getting this particular song, I'd have to say. This is like a good evening alternative brewer. This song is like a good evening alternative brewer, I'd have to say. It definitely reminds me a lot of Headstrong, just within a more relaxed kind of sense. Yeah, Contagious just reminds me of Headstrong and Stand Up, just in a more relaxed type sense, I'd have to suppose. Pretty relatively watery and aquatic type riffs on the song, I'd particularly have to say. It's just a lot more of just like a steadfast, just kind of ambient type one, I'd have to suppose. Just a good kind of summary, type kickback, I'd have to say. It's a good concept, kind of get some of these. Just a real nice one, just within a malaise type sense, but it's just kind of the concept. It's just kind of the concept that some of these are just some different approaches from Trapt. I'd have to say they tried 2 different themes. They tried 2 different approaches to some of their singles this time around. They didn't really try to replicate Headstrong. I mean, this has a similar feel. Contagious has a similar feel to Headstrong, but this is kind of a lot more just ambient, I'd have to say. It's not quite as turn up. I mean, it is kind of in the chorus, but it's just kind of the concept. It's just interesting to get some of these new pitches from Trapt, because they were trying some new things, and for the most part, they work, I'd have to say. It's just kind of the concept that, once again, you kind of want something with a little bit more ferocious kind of bite, just to kind of have like for some turn up. So these are both 2 songs that are just great for like the summery late day kind of makeshift type fare. Contagious and Who's Going Home With You Tonight both have a pretty good standard approach as far as that particular kind of happens. They're just kind of more amongst like the evening makeshift and wind down as far as that pitch kind of happens. So I still feel like it still feels like folks are going to want a song with some bigger turn up as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens with it. But these are just good for some evening after hours, I'd have to say. The third single is Black Rose, and this is another kind of aquatic type one, I'd have to say. This is basically like a malaise kind of flounderish summer late day ruminating of a song, I'd have to say. This is like an easy kind of pace. This is an easy pace kind of rock afterthought blue collar type tune, I'd have to say. It's a pretty good concept kind of get this particular one. It's just another kind of steadfast type one. I like the concept of some of these, but a lot of these just kind of have a lot more of like a steady type pace, just to kind of suppose that some of these, it's interesting. I would have felt like, based upon the album cover of this particular album and some of that particular type pitches, the overall bravado of like the song of Who's Going Home With You Tonight, you would have thought that the singles that were released to radio would have had a little bit more pep for something with a little bit more turn up, just something that could get them back to their edge of like their early 2000s days, something like that. Even like another song like Stand Up would have been a pretty nice one. Not to say that these are bad songs. I do recommend most of the singles on here. The only real single I don't recommend is Only One in Color, the 4th single, but I'd have to say basically Black Rose is a pretty quality song, but I do kind of miss like the overall pep and just kind of jiviness and just kind of in your face type toot of like Stand Up. That was a pretty nice one. Then the overall just kind of car traverse mastery type song of Headstrong and some of that type pitch, and even like the summer kind of hop and bop type tone of Still Frame, some of those type ones. I feel like they kind of chose more songs like Echo and some of those type ones off of like the third single Echo off of Trapt from 2002, and some of the ones that were more off of like Someone in Control, like the second and third single as far as that pitch kind of happened. Like the singles off of Someone in Control were good, but they just kind of took the pace into like more malaise. It's just kind of the concept that you have to look into this. Basically, all three of these singles are a lot more just kind of kick back and just kind of more contemplative, just type after hours type tone. All four of the singles have more day after hours type kickback as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens with this. The concept to kind of get some of these, if you are looking for more riveting type energy, there are some songs like that that are on. There are some songs like that that are on this particular album. It's just kind of the concept in terms of the radio singles, the ones that you would have heard on the radio back in the day or even in recent times if you still hear Trapped within a relative sense as far as some of these songs particularly kind of happen apart from Still Frame and Headstrong. It's just kind of the concept that a lot of these or just kind of more get you through the day, just kind of makeshift kind of wind down type tunes as far as that pitch kind of happens with this. Just, I mean, this is a blue collar album and it does it within a summary type sense, and it does have some relatively lambent type pep as far as that pitch kind of happens with it, but it's just kind of the concept. It's just not a good amount of turn up, and I feel like they probably could have used one of those in the singles. I feel like they probably could have used one of those in the singles. I mean, to have four songs that were meant for makeshift kind of rock and just the overall blue collar type pitch of wind down type tones, I feel like there probably needed to be something with a little bit of spark, and I don't know if they purposely avoided that concept just to be able to kind of just not get pigeonholed into having just like only headstrong type songs, but it's just kind of the concept that these are some good songs like Who's Going Home With You Tonight is just like a summary after hours, just kind of it's just kind of a summary after hours, just wind down kind of victory lap kind of tune as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just kind of some wind down, but it's not, it doesn't have to be in a makeshift sense, but it's just kind of still a relaxed kind of, it's still kind of a relaxed type song. And then Contagious is just kind of some malaise ruminating. It's pretty similar to like Black Rose. Both of those are kind of more malaise type tunes that just kind of feel like some vintage kind of trap type tunes just within a more kind of relative kickback, I'd have to say. And then the fourth single, Only One in Color, is just like a typical kind of trap type tune just within a makeshift kind of after hours sense. So it's just kind of the concept that a lot of these just kind of have that similar type pitch where I feel like they saved their songs like Cover Up, Curiosity Kills, and Wasteland, which are three kind of more riveting type songs as far as that pitch kind of has, which are three kind of more riveting type songs as far as that pitch kind of has with it, just to have some turn up to kind of get things kind of more started and just kind of more liveliness and get you more excited and exhilarated as far as that kind of goes with it. But it's just kind of the concept. You get these, but it's just, I feel like this is almost like a two-tone kind of album. I'd have to say it's a two-tone kind of project here just because you look after it. You do get your day life and just commerce life as far as that ruminating and the pitch kind of happens with the introspection. But this is kind of the concept that it just, the radio stuff is kind of kept to like something civil and that sort of stuff, and then the more recreational moments are kind of more in the album cuts as far as that kind of goes with it. But it's just kind of a disappointment just because Trap was kind of off to the wayside and they were starting to kind of fall apart on the charts as far as their appeal kind of went with it. Just kind of concept. I mean, their albums continued to happen, but it's just they were pretty far removed from like their hit days of 2002 and 2003, and it's just kind of the concept. I mean, but at least their 2005 album, Someone in Control, at least had a single that at least had some similar kind of vibes to like Headstrong. It's just kind of the concept. It's not like I wanted them to replicate Headstrong on every album. It's just kind of the fact that they needed something with a little bit more turn up. But yeah, just to say that was Black Rose. It's a pretty good song. I do recommend 3 out of 4 of these singles. So the fourth single, Only One in Color, this one's just kind of a malaise type one that just kind of felt like some standard kind of ruminating type feel that just didn't work and pull it off quite as well. Just didn't really enjoy the riffage that particular one. This really felt like the second or third single off of Someone in Control, one of those songs like Disconnected, Out of Touch, some of those type pitches as far as that particularly kind of went with it. Just a kind of wind down type tune just for sunset skies and just stargazing, just for summer gazing and stuff like that as far as that pitch kind of happened. It was just not as enjoyable as it was on Someone in Control, I'd have to say. So it's just kind of the concept about it. But to recommend these songs on here, basically there's 11 songs on this particular album, and out of those 11 I wound up recommending to you 7. So the 7 songs I recommend on here would be Who's Going Home With You Tonight, Contagious, Wasteland, Cover Up, Wherever She Goes, Black Rose, and Curiosity Kills. So I talked about 3 of these songs on here in particular, but some of these, to get to some of these, Wasteland's a pretty nice one. This is a hit song on here. This is like a basic kind of evening tunage of a song, I'd have to say. This has a punkish feel, I would definitely feel like, but it's vanilla. This song has a punkish feel, but it's vanilla, I'd have to say, so it's a good concept for that. This song has some edge, and it's a good basic outing kind of turn up song, so I definitely appreciate this one. This is a great way to kick off the album, I'd have to say. It's a pretty good riffage on here. It's just a basic kind of vanilla type turn up type tune. It's a basic kind kind of vanilla type kickoff type tune. It's a good concept to kind of see some of this. There definitely need to be songs like this, and I definitely feel like this probably should have been a single or something like that, just within the relative pitch. I mean, it's a pretty standard one. It's just kind of typical Trapt as far as that pitch kind of has with it. It's a good song, but it just doesn't. I don't want to say it doesn't jump off the page, but it's just kind of the concept. It just feels like it just kind of feels like a factory kind of trap song that just kind of doesn't have like the gleam about it, just because there weren't really radio singles that kind of charted as heavily on this particular album. It just kind of felt like this was an underground type trap album, just because they had these hit songs on here that were very quality, but they just were not released to radio. The ones that were just kind of more homely type ones, or just kind of more makeshift type ones. So it's just kind of the concept. But Cover Up is a pretty nice one. In my opinion, this is one of the best songs on the whole album, I have to say. Definitely appreciate the riffage. This one reminds me a lot of Stand Up from Someone in Control, I'd have to say. This is pretty much like an out on the town kind of Traverse Blair of a song, I'd have to say. It's a good in motion kind of song, definitely. It's some good in motion fun, I would definitely have to feel like. This song is some good in motion fun, I would definitely have to feel like. And this is just vintage Trapt, I'd have to say. And it's just got some, this song has similar snap to Headstrong, I would definitely feel like. So it's a good concept to kind of see some of these. I'm glad that they still were able to crank out songs like this and just prove that they do, and just kind of prove that they still do have some of these strengths as far as this particular pitch kind of has with it. Because this is just, because these are just some excellent kind of moments just for Trapt and just the overall appeal they continue to have. So it's a good concept to kind of get some of these riveting type ones. These are definitely some kickstarters and party starters as far as those particular pitches kind of has with it. I feel like Wasteland, Cover Up, and Wherever She Goes are just some real nice ones. I feel like Wasteland, Cover Up, and Curiosity Kills are some great ones to kind of get just for some good turn up, just within a relative sense of just like some good in between type moments, just for some hangout sessions and just overall or easy going kind of house party bops and stuff like that, or some decent kind of mild venue bops as far as that pitch kind of happens. Good concepts there. Wherever She Goes is a pretty highlighted one. This one's pretty similar to Black Rose. I'd have to say it's a good similar concept to that particular pitch. This is like a flounderish kind of summer haze of a song. This is definitely some hop and bop kind of day commerce, I'd have to say. And this is an on the town kind of steadfast kind of vanilla day that I feel like with this particular song. So this is kind of one of those more introspective type songs. I just would have to feel like there's some summer kind of floundering as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. This real kind of standard day commerce doesn't necessarily have to be car traverse, but just kind of being out on the town just within like a summery type sense, just kind of appreciating the summer and outdoors as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some sunny skies, some stuff like that. Pretty steadfast kind of vanilla day. This is one of the most basic songs in the whole project, I'd have to say, but it's a good concept. It's pretty much, if you like Black Rose, it's a good concept to get. If you like Black Rose, it's a good concept to get another song like it, I'd have to say. So a lot of these are just some summer kind of floundering type energy just within the standard malaise of either like 3 o'clock p.m., 2 o'clock p.m., 5 o'clock p.m., 6 o'clock p.m. Just, and it kind of blends and blurs the lines between like day commerce and just steadfast kind of recreational fare just within a summary type sense, and then like evening makeshift just within the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock wind down kind of malaise. So it's a good concept to kind of get some of those pitches. And then Curiosity Kills is a pretty good highlight on here. This is definitely a pretty boppish one. This is like an out and about kind of city hopping sunny day types. This is some good out and about kind of city hopping, I'd have to say. This is like a good sunny day kind of jovial pep of a song, I would definitely feel like. And this is just a great kind of getting snackage and mild errands type tune, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept for this. This one kind of reminded me of like some NWA type fare, something that you would have heard from NWA on the some similar kind of productions to like the cityscaping that NWA would have had back in the 80s as far as that particular kind of pitch happens with it. But it's just kind of a good out on the town type bop as far as that pitch kind of happens to go. And it's just a good sunny day type jovialness that just has a lot of appeal about it. So this one definitely could have used another song like this also. It's just a pretty good hop and bop type one to kind of get on like a sunny day as far as that pitch kind of happens. So it's a good concept. So, but to talk about the 4 songs I didn't recommend on here, basically some of these on here like Ready When You Are and Forget About the Rain are just kind of more makeshift malaise type songs that just kind of have a more wind down and homely type sense that just didn't really have the appeal of what I was looking for. These are just kind of more lukewarm and half baked kind of malaise type songs that were just kind of a worse version of like those type songs that were on Someone in Control and some of those type pitches. Just kind of some evening malaise that just didn't pull it off quite as well. Just a lot more relaxed and homely, just in an optimistic sense that just didn't work. That just didn't work quite as well as it needed to. And then the last Terror was just kind of one that this kind of feels like a car traverse type song just within a standard malaise. It just got done with work, or at least at the last moments of it, just like 3:30 p.m., 4:30 p.m., something like that. Just kind of one is the car drear and dredge of just like the fatigue of just getting tasks done and getting ready to wind down for the day in the evening as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. But this was not quite as enjoyable. Like these are the sorts of songs that Metallica and some These are sorts of ones that Metallica and some power bands kind of pull off pretty well, just within a more power ballad type sense. This is almost kind of a power ballad, but just didn't really pull it off quite as well as it needed to. I mean, I did like some of the riffage on here, but it just was not quite as endearing as it needed to be, I'd have to suppose. So that was one I just didn't vibe with quite as much. Just would have to say. So me basically recommending 7 songs out of 11. So me basically recommending 7 songs out of 11 on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. I mean, it has some quality on here. It definitely has some decent pitches. Just about it. It has some pretty solid and decent summer life as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. Some good concepts. The singles are mostly pretty good. I'd have to say it has a decent amount of pep and just overall ambience that it carries in it. This album does have some characters. Just kind of the concept that the more riveting type songs are just not brandished quite as well this particular time, I'd have to say. And it's just kind of a clumsy type affair that 4 singles off this particular album are just all kind of more wind down and just kind of more malaise type songs. This more so than the pitch of having something with a little bit more spark. I definitely think that that was probably not the best idea to have had 4 songs that are just kind of more just kind of in between, just like ambience, makeshift malaise, and just kind of more just wind down type modes. Just as far as those particular pitches kind of happen with this, it's kind of the concept that just didn't really have the affable kind of appeal like a casual market of something that could have had some sparks. So it's just kind of the concept, but it is quality. I mean, there's some good stuff on here. It's just kind of a more standard, just kind of summary kind of malaise and just overall just evening skies and just some decent pep just within a relative sense, but it's just kind of a different turnabout this time. But there are some turn up songs on here, but they're just not as immediate, I'd have to say. So it's just kind of concept about it. And the social score of this album, I'm going to give like the social score like a 6.5 out of 10 because I feel like there's quality on here, but it's just like I was saying, not immediate. Just doesn't really jump off the page. Just that with the immediate sense of just kind of like you need to fuck with this and just know about it. In terms of like the songs I would recommend to like your buds and stuff like that, it kind of has the appeal. There are a couple of gems on here like Cover Up and Curiosity Kills and some of those type ones, and a little bit of Wasteland, some of those type ones. But for the most part, the hangout type appeal of this particular album just doesn't hit quite as heavily. And this is kind of here and there with the lady songs. It's not quite as heavily. I mean, there's some definite kind of malaise and anguish on this particular album, but it's just not quite as. It just doesn't have like the social spark is probably what it needed. It's just kind of it's a decent concept. It does have the appeal. Like this band is pretty good at ruminating and stuff like that. Just the anguish and just kind of thought provokingness of just having that in like a social aspect, but it just doesn't always deliver on that. So it's just kind of concept. So it's just kind of the concept. So 6.5 out of 10. In terms of the future, like I don't really full blown know what Trapt has been up to in recent times. I'd have to say they have some good stuff on here just within the relative pitch of they do have a few more albums. I'm going to get to their 2013 album soon enough. I reviewed their 2010 album back in 2017. So I reviewed the first initial 4. I reviewed the first initial 4 Trapt albums. I haven't reviewed Amalgamation from like before Trapt of 2002. I will get to that one eventually if it has some new stuff on there. But I would have to say we're going to get to some more of these. I'm going to keep reviewing some Trapt and some stuff like that. We'll have to see what's up with that. Pretty good summer breeze of an album, but it just has like the standard malaise about it, and it just didn't really brandish like the singles correctly. But it's still some good stuff on here.